The most powerful moments of your life didn't happen in time, they happened outside of it. You know what I'm talking about. Those seconds when everything stopped, when you felt yourself expand beyond your skin, beyond your story, beyond the person you've been pretending to be. But here's what nobody tells you. Those weren't peak experiences. They were glimpses of where you actually live when you're not performing survival. Lily sits in her car after another networking event, staring at business cards she doesn't want to follow up on. Successful by every measure, empty by every feeling. She's been having these moments lately, sudden clarity that cuts through the noise like waking up inside a dream she didn't know she was having. What if I'm living in the wrong dimension? She whispers to her reflection in the rearview mirror. These aren't coincidences you're experiencing. The synchronicities, the sudden knowing, the way certain conversations feel hollow, while others light you up from the inside, these are symptoms. Signs that you're oscillating between two different frequencies of existence. Carl Jung called these moments when the self breaks through the mask of the persona. But what he really meant was this: you're remembering who you are underneath, who you had to become. You're living between two worlds right now, and it's exhausting. One world operates on the physics of effort, control, and performance. You work harder, optimize more, push through resistance, collect achievements like evidence that you matter. This is what Jung would call the domain of the persona, the mask you wear to survive in a world that demands you be predictable, useful, and small. But there's another world operating by completely different laws. In this dimension, things flow toward you when you stop chasing them. Clarity arrives, not through analysis, but through stillness. People show up exactly when you need them, as if reality itself is conspiring on your behalf. You feel more like yourself in 10 minutes of authentic conversation than in 10 hours of professional networking. The split is killing you slowly. Like tuning between two radio stations, one full of static and struggle, the other clear but always fading. You catch glimpses of the clear station in meditation and nature, in moments when you forget to manage how others see you. But the moment you try to live there permanently, something pulls you back into the static. Here's what's really happening. You've been trained to dismiss the clear station as unrealistic, impractical, or selfish. You've been conditioned to believe that struggle equals worthiness, that if it's not hard, it's not real. So you keep tuning back to the frequency of effort, even though it leaves you depleted and disconnected from your own soul. Tony discovered this the hard way. For 34 years, he climbed every ladder, checked every box, became the version of himself that made his family proud. But success felt like wearing a suit that never quite fit. In quiet moments, he'd remember the teenager who wrote poetry, who felt things deeply, who dreamed of changing the world through beauty rather than quarterly earnings. Where did he go? Tony would wonder, staring at spreadsheets that meant nothing to his heart. The teenager didn't disappear. He was exiled to make room for someone more acceptable, more profitable, more safe. This is what Carl Jung's shadow work reveals. The parts of yourself you abandoned to survive are still alive in your unconscious, sending you signals through restlessness, longing, and the persistent feeling that you're living someone else's life. You call it depression, but what if it's actually your authentic self muffled under layers of should and supposed to? You call it anxiety, but what if it's your soul's way of saying, this isn't the life we agreed to live? The exhaustion you feel isn't from working too hard. It's from working against your own nature day after day, year after year. The higher dimension isn't a place you need to reach, it's a frequency you need to remember. It's been available to you all along, but you've been trained to live in the lower field of consciousness, where love is conditional, worth is earned, and you're only as valuable as your last achievement. In the higher dimension, you simply exist, and that existence is enough. Your presence is the gift. Your perspective is the contribution. Your healing is the work. Take a moment right now. When was the last time you felt that clear signal? When did you last experience yourself as more than your problems, your performance, your productivity? Don't analyze it. Just remember it. Let yourself feel how natural it was, how much like coming home. Here's the breakthrough that changes everything. The higher dimension isn't somewhere else. It's here now, coexisting with the physical world, like music coexisting with silence. The difference isn't location, it's tuning. And the reason you can't hold that frequency isn't because you're not spiritual enough, not disciplined enough, not evolved enough. It's because you haven't integrated your shadow. Candace learned this during what she calls her great unraveling. After years of being the reliable one, the rescuer, the woman who never said no, she found herself sobbing in grocery store parking lots for no reason she could name. The life she'd built felt like a beautiful prison. Everyone loved Candace, or rather they loved the version of Candace who never had needs, never caused problems, never took up too much space. But Candace had a shadow. Buried beneath all that giving was a fierce, hungry part of her that wanted to be seen, chosen, pursued, a part that was tired of earning love through service and wanted to be loved for simply existing. She'd been so afraid of being selfish that she'd become selfless to the point of self-erasure. Her shadow contained all the wanting she'd been taught was inappropriate for a good woman to feel. The breakthrough came during a therapy session when Candace was describing yet another situation where she'd said yes when she meant no. Her therapist asked a simple question. What would happen if you let people see that you have needs too? Candace's immediate response was terror. They'd leave. They'd realize I'm not worth the trouble. But as she sat with that fear, something deeper emerged. A voice that had been whispered into silence for decades finally spoke. I'm so tired of disappearing. I'm so tired of being loved for what I give instead of who I am. I want someone to fight for me the way I fight for everyone else. The moment Candace started acknowledging her shadow through journaling, through therapy, through finally saying, I can't, instead of, I don't want to be a burden, something shifted. Not just in her internal world, but in how reality responded to her. People started treating her differently, not because she demanded it, but because she was finally transmitting from her whole self rather than just her acceptable parts. This is what Jung meant when he wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes." The higher dimension becomes accessible when you stop fragmenting yourself to fit into the lower one. But here's where most people get stuck. They think shadow work means becoming comfortable with their dark side. They think it's about expressing anger appropriately or setting better boundaries. Those things matter, but they're just the beginning. The real revelation is this. Your shadow contains not just your suppressed darkness, but your suppressed light. Think about it. What qualities have you been taught to dim your intelligence because it might intimidate others? Your sensitivity because it makes people uncomfortable. Your power because you were told good people don't want too much. Your joy because others might feel bad about their own struggles. Your sexuality because spiritual people are supposed to transcend such things. Without shadow integration, your energy field keeps collapsing back into survival mode. You might meditate for an hour and feel expanded, peaceful, connected to something larger than yourself. But the moment someone criticizes you, the moment you face a financial stress, the moment you're reminded of your unhealed wounds, you contract back into the persona's defensive patterns, back to proving, performing, protecting. This isn't failure. This is information. Your triggers are showing you where the shadow still lives. Every time you react instead of respond, every time you people please instead of truth tell, every time you dim your light to make others comfortable, you're being shown another piece of yourself that's been waiting in exile, waiting to be welcomed home. Consider Sean's story. He was a successful coach helping others find their authentic voice, but he noticed something disturbing. The more successful he became, the more isolated he felt. In sessions with clients, he felt alive, connected, purposeful. But in his personal relationships, he felt like he was performing the role of the wise mentor, even when he just wanted to be vulnerable and confused like everyone else. Sean's shadow contained his neediness, his confusion, his desire to be taken care of instead of always being the one taking care of others. He'd built an identity around being the helper, the healer, the one with answers, but his shadow was full of questions, full of the little boy who just wanted someone to see his fear and say, "It's okay, I've got you." When Sean finally started showing up authentically in his personal relationships, admitting when he didn't know something, asking for support, when he was struggling, letting others see his imperfections, his relationships deepened in ways that shocked him. People didn't lose respect for him. They felt permission to be more real themselves. Here's what nobody tells you about Carl Jung's shadow work. It's not about becoming a better person. It's about becoming a whole person. The parts of you that feel ugly, needy, angry, ambitious, sexual, wild, these aren't obstacles to your spiritual growth. They're fuel for it. When you can hold space for your full spectrum of humanity, you stop broadcasting from lack and start broadcasting from abundance. Remember Elena's story. She spent decades trying to be the spiritual person she thought she should be, calm, selfless, never jealous, never petty. But her shadow was full of fierce protectiveness, competitive drive, and sharp-tongued wit. She'd been taught these qualities were unspiritual, so she buried them. The result, she felt flat, lifeless, like a spiritual bypass of her own humanity. The transformation happened when Elena realized her shadow qualities weren't bugs in her programming, they were features. Her fierceness protected the vulnerable. Her competitive drive pushed her toward excellence. Her sharp wit cut through pretense to reach truth. When she integrated these qualities consciously, rather than suppressing them unconsciously, she became magnetic in a way that surprised everyone, including herself. But the integration process wasn't comfortable. Elena had to face the ways she'd been judgmental while pretending to be accepting. She had to own her jealousy of others' success while maintaining her spiritual facade. She had to acknowledge her desire for recognition while believing she should be humble. Each piece of shadow work felt like dying a little death, the death of who she thought she should be to make room for who she actually was. This is the paradox of higher dimensional living. You don't ascend by rejecting your humanity. You ascend by embracing it so completely that you transform it from the inside out. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's your unexpressed power waiting to be alchemized into gold. The moment you stop making parts of yourself wrong, you stop attracting people who make you feel wrong. The moment you stop hiding your needs, you stop attracting people who can't meet you where you are. The moment you stop performing love and start embodying it, love stops being something you chase and becomes something you are. Carl Jung's shadow work isn't about perfection. It's about integration. It's about becoming so whole that you don't need external validation to feel valuable, so complete that you don't need to control outcomes to feel safe, so aligned that you don't need to perform to be loved. From this place of internal coherence, the higher dimension isn't something you visit, it's something you inhabit. And here's the final piece that makes everything click. The higher dimension has been trying to reach you through your shadow all along. Every time you felt too much for someone else's comfort, that was your expanded self trying to emerge. Every time you felt angry at injustice, that was your power trying to protect what matters. Every time you felt wildly alive and then quickly shut it down, that was your authentic frequency getting interference from the persona's programming. Your shadow isn't what's keeping you from the higher dimension. Your shadow is the doorway. The shift happens when you realize you don't access higher consciousness by trying harder. You access it by letting go of the effort to be someone other than who you are. In the dimension of struggle, you chase alignment. In the dimension of flow, alignment chases you. This isn't about becoming passive or giving up agency. It's about shifting from forcing to allowing, from pushing rivers to moving with currents that were always there, but invisible to the persona's limited perception. You don't keep a radio signal clear by cranking the volume, you keep the channel clean. Shadow work becomes your energetic hygiene. Every day you check in. What am I projecting onto others that actually belongs to me? What old emotional contracts am I still honoring that no longer serve anyone? What exiled parts of my psyche are trying to get my attention through repeated patterns, difficult relationships, or persistent triggers? James discovered this during his divorce. Instead of making his ex-wife the villain in his story, he got curious about what she was reflecting back to him. Her criticism felt so familiar, so cutting, because it matched his own internal critic. Her emotional unavailability mirrored the way he'd been unavailable to his own feelings for years. Instead of fighting the mirror, he started cleaning it. The work wasn't comfortable. It meant owning his passive-aggressive patterns, his tendency to withdraw when hurt, his secret belief that he wasn't worth fighting for. But as James reclaimed these shadow qualities with compassion instead of judgment, something remarkable happened. He stopped attracting people who treated him the way he'd been treating himself. This is how internal coherence reshapes external reality with uncanny synchronicity. When you're no longer abandoning parts of yourself, you stop attracting people who abandon you. When you're no longer betraying your own truth, you stop encountering betrayal in your relationships. When you're no longer rejecting your own needs, you stop being surrounded by people who can't meet you where you are. The higher dimension operates on the principle that your internal state creates your external experience, not the other way around. This sounds mystical until you start living it. Then it feels as natural as breathing. Take Alexandra, who spent years trying to manifest abundance while secretly believing she didn't deserve it. She'd follow every prosperity practice, affirm every abundance mantra. But her shadow was full of guilt about wanting more than others, had shame about being visible with her gifts, and terror that success would make her unlovable. The breakthrough came when Alexandra stopped trying to transcend these fears and started dialoguing with them. What if her guilt was actually wisdom about staying connected to her values? What if her shame was protection against the real pain of past rejections? What if her terror was love trying to keep her safe from imagined threats? when she stopped making her shadow wrong and started making it welcome the energy that had been tied up in internal conflict became available for creation. Opportunities appeared, resources materialized, people showed up offering exactly what she needed. Not because she'd become more worthy, but because she'd become more whole. You must live from the self daily, not just visit it on weekends or during meditation retreats. This requires a fundamental shift from doing your life to being your life, from managing your experience to trusting your experience, from performing your worth to inhabiting your worth. The path is surprisingly simple, though not easy. Daily moments of conscious withdrawal from persona roles. Morning pages that let your uncensored thoughts flow onto paper. Evening reflections that honor what actually happened versus what you wished had happened. Dream journaling that listens to the wisdom of your unconscious mind. Like a diver returning to the surface with treasure, you bring pieces of the deep into your everyday life. The insight from meditation infuses how you respond to conflict at work. The clarity from solitude shapes how you show up in relationships. The self-compassion from shadow work transforms how you handle mistakes and setbacks. This isn't about perfection or never falling back into old patterns. It's about shortening the time between falling asleep and waking up. It's about noticing when you're performing versus when you're being, when you're reacting from wounds versus responding from wisdom, when you're broadcasting from lack versus transmitting from fullness. The higher dimension becomes your default frequency rather than your weekend retreat. You start to move through the world with a different quality of presence, not trying to get somewhere else, not trying to become someone else, but fully here as exactly who you are. People notice. Reality responds. Synchronicities multiply. But here's what surprised everyone who makes this transition. The higher dimension isn't blissful all the time. It's real all the time. You still feel sadness, but it moves through you like weather through sky instead of sticking like mud on glass. You still face challenges, but you meet them from expansion rather than contraction, curiosity rather than defense. You realize that accessing higher consciousness isn't about transcending your humanity. It's about inhabiting it so fully that it becomes transparent to something greater. The self doesn't replace the ego. It embraces the ego so completely that the ego relaxes its death grip on control and allows the larger intelligence of life to move through you. This is the daily practice, remembering that you are both human and divine, both individual and universal, both perfectly imperfect and inherently whole. The paradox that once confused you becomes the doorway that liberates you. You've already been there, don't pretend you haven't. In the moments when time stopped, when you felt yourself as larger than your story, when love moved through you without effort or agenda. These weren't peak experiences. They were glimpses of your natural state before fear taught you to contract, before society taught you to perform, before trauma taught you to hide. The choice isn't whether you can access higher dimensions. The choice is whether you'll remember that you already lived there underneath all the layers of who you had to become to survive. Carl Jung said it perfectly. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This isn't a journey towards somewhere else. It's a journey home to yourself. If this resonated with you, I'd love to know, when was the last time you felt outside of time? And what did you notice in that moment? Share in the comments below. Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you're ready to go deeper into this work of becoming whole, I'll see you in the next video, where we explore what Jung called the transcendent function, the mysterious process by which opposites unite within you to birth something entirely new. Until then, remember, you don't have to go anywhere to find yourself. You just have to stop running away.